Hello and welcome back to another Scratch tutorial from Technocamps. And today we are going to be looking over the event blocks within Scratch. Now, I'm sure you're all familiar with the event blocks already. You've probably used a few of them in the past, but these are maybe some of the most important blocks in Scratch because they allow us to do different things in the program depending on what happens. Now, what I mean is that the blocks we've looked at so far, such as motion, controlling the movement of our characters, looks, controlling the things they say and the way they look, sounds, controlling the sounds they make. These are all things that affect the character and the way that character acts on the screen during our project. But events allow those things to happen depending on different conditions. So, I'm sure I don't need to explain when the green flag is clicked to anyone, because that is probably the block that you've used most. When the green flag is clicked is essentially the go block for Scratch. So I can say when the green flag is clicked, I want Scratch to say hello. And when I click the green flag, Scratch says hello. Okay. And then maybe I could say hello for 2 seconds and then get rid of what I said. So Scratch says hello for 2 seconds and then it disappears. So when the green flag is clicked, acts as the go button. The green flag is what makes our project run in Scratch. And so we're saying when the project starts running, do these things. And that's very useful. But maybe we want other things to happen in the project. Things to happen later on, after the green flag has been clicked, but only if something very particular happens. So, for instance, we can keep this that Scratch says hello when the green flag is clicked, but maybe when the space key is pressed, I want Scratch to do a jump. So I'm going to tell Scratch to glide for 1 second from position Y0, maybe to uh, Y50. And then, of course, after Scratch jumps, Scratch needs to fall back down to Y0. Now, if I click the green flag, Scratch says hello, I press the space bar, and Scratch jumps up and falls back down. So there's a lot of different keys in this drop-down menu. We've got all of our arrows on our keyboard. We've got all of the alphabet on the keyboard. And we've also got all of the numbers. So we can make Scratch do lots of different things depending on all of these inputs. We've also got the option for any key to be pressed. So it doesn't matter what I press on the keyboard, Scratch will do something. So, when some key is pressed is a very useful block, especially for making controls in our games. We also have a when the sprite is clicked block, another very useful block that allows us to do something when we click on Scratch as a character. So maybe I want to repeat 36 times. I'm going to have Scratch turn 10 degrees. Oop, God, he's turned a bit too far there. Let's put him back to 90. And now, when I click the green flag, I can press space, click on Scratch, and Scratch does a backflip. Because when I click on Scratch, Scratch turns around, and when I press space, Scratch jumps up. So I can get all three happening nice and quick, and Scratch does a cool backflip. Or forward flip, maybe that is. So yeah, also a very useful block. Very good for games as well. Maybe you want to click on things on the screen. Maybe you've got a game where you point and click at things instead of controlling it with your keyboard. Another very good use for the when the sprite is clicked is for making buttons in Scratch. Because with this block, we can make a button that you can click on the screen and it changes something in the program. Another event block is when the backdrop switches. So I'm going to go to my backdrops and I'm going to go to the backdrop tab and choose a backdrop. Um, maybe I'll have the castle and then I'll have the door of the castle. I'll delete the first one. There we go. Now Scratch is outside the castle. And maybe we'll say when the backdrop switches to castle 2, and I think, oh, this one is castle 2. Let's put them in order. So I want to start with the green flag. I'm going to make sure I switch the backdrop to castle 1. No, castle 2. Yes. And then when it switches to castle 1, which is the other one, the one with the door, I want Scratch to, I don't know, what costumes does Scratch have? I'm going to have Scratch look like he's starting to run into the castle. So I'm going to switch Scratch's costume to costume 2. And maybe I'll also make sure that Scratch is in costume 1 when the program starts. So here we go. Oh, I also need a way to switch the backdrop, don't I? So maybe when Scratch does the backflip, we'll switch the backdrop to castle 1. That makes sense? So now when I click the green flag, let's make Scratch jump, do a backflip, and Scratch ends up at the door and looks like Scratch is running now. Try that again. See how Scratch is back to normal. Space, do a backflip, and Scratch runs toward the door. Okay, so when the backdrop switches is another good one because that means we can make things happen on our background. And when certain backgrounds change, then we can run certain pieces of code for our sprites. So I'm going to clear all these away a sec, because we've now got a lot of stuff on the screen. And we've got a block that says when the timer is more than 10. Well, there is actually a timer in Scratch. You might not know about it. But if we look under sensing, we've got a little timer here. We can tick that. And there we go. It's showing on the screen. There's a timer running in the background. So I'm going to grab out the reset timer block because I think that's going to be useful. And we can say when we click the green flag, we want to reset the timer. And maybe, oh, I know one we can do. We'll have Scratch standing still. So we're going to put Scratch on the green flag, switch to costume 1. So Scratch is in the normal costume and he's just standing still outside the door. Maybe we'll also put Scratch on the floor because that makes more sense. Let's put Scratch over here. So we're going to tell Scratch to go to... Oh, it won't let me stop. We'll tell Scratch to go to this position as well and reset the timer. And when the timer gets to more than 10, I want Scratch to look like Scratch is running a few times. How can I do that? How can I make Scratch look like Scratch is running on the spot? Maybe if I'm quick here, I can edit this costume a little bit. I'm gonna get a paintbrush. I'm gonna copy here, and I'm gonna draw a little line by here. There we go. I'm going to take away the gap between Scratch's legs and choose it again. And I'm going to add, this needs to be really small, doesn't it? Is that small enough? Maybe one more. There we go. I'm going to add another line coming up here. There you go. That looks okay, I think. It sort of looks like Scratch is running. So let's, we'll flip Scratch. So we're going to say for Scratch to switch to costume 2, wait, or not very long at all, 0.1 of a second, and then switch to costume 3, and again wait 0.1 of a second. And then at the end of this, I will also get Scratch to reset the timer for me. Just like that. We can move all this up a bit, make that a bit clearer. There we go. So now, when I press the green flag, the timer restarts. And when the timer gets to 10 seconds, we're counting up. And Scratch does a little run. And then the timer restarts again. So with this when the timer block, we can have Scratch repeatedly do something every time the timer reaches a certain point, which is very handy. You could have a game where maybe you get one more bar of health once every minute. And so every 60 seconds, the player gets one of their hearts back. Another block we have here is when loudness is more than 10. So maybe when Scratch gets really loud, I want Scratch to say hello for 2 seconds. Okay, we'll make sure that this is playing. And as you can see, I'm speaking here and nothing's happening. But if I get really loud and say, hello, hello. Ooh, that didn't want to work this time. Well, that worked for me in the past. Hello. No, Scratch doesn't want to listen to me, apparently. Hello. I'm not sure with that one, but that should pick up off your microphone and Scratch should be able to hear the things that you're saying. Okay, well, we're down to the final few blocks, and these, when I receive message and broadcast message, are the handiest blocks in Scratch. And you'll see why. Because when I receive message, allows me to click on this drop down and create a new message. So what can we do? I know. Let's say hello. Okay. So I'm going to add myself another character. And who can talk to Scratch? How about a dog? So I'm going to get the dog and I'm going to flip the dog around. I want the dog to face the other direction. The other direction. Get the arrow, and there we go. And I'll flip the dog around so that the dog is looking at Scratch. Lovely. And now what I can do is I can tell Scratch when the green flag is clicked, I want Scratch to say hello for 1 second. Then I want Scratch to broadcast the message hello. Now, this message will not come up on the screen. This is not a message in our program. It's a message in our code. So I'm going to go to my dog and I'm going to say, when I receive hello, then I want um, to I want to say, um, who are you? And then the dog will broadcast, and I'm going to make a new message. Who? And when Scratch receives the message from the dog, who, then we'll have Scratch. Um, what can Scratch do? Think, And yeah, there we go. That'll do as a program. So Scratch says hello. Who are you? And then Scratch thinks, here I should have said, who are you? For 1 second or 2 seconds. Maybe we make it a bit longer. And then Scratch can think, for 2 seconds. That'll make that work a little bit better. I'm gonna hide my timer now. Let's click the green flag. Hello, who are you? So we're able to send messages from one sprite to the other, from one sprite to the backdrop. We can send these messages through our program. Now here, I'm just using them to have a quick conversation. But I'm sure you can imagine how many different things you could send these messages for. You could send a message when a sound happens. You could send a message when one number is bigger than another number. You could send a message when a sprite has been touched or touches a different sprite. You could send a message when a costume changes or when the color effect on a costume gets to a certain amount. You could send a message when a character gets to a certain position on the screen. You could send a message for anything. And that means that these messages allow us to make our own event blocks. And they allow us to make very complicated programs because we can send messages whenever we want and we can activate different pieces of code whenever we want them to be activated. Okay, well, I hope everyone found that session useful. These blocks are very useful, and I hope you all have a nice play around with them and work out how they work and make some really cool projects with your event blocks. Well, thank you all, and I will see you all in the next session.